Hey, welcome back. This is Starticus Chats at Digital DNA. I am delighted to be joined by David Phelan from Belfast Met. David, let's start with a question. Why are you guys getting involved in the startup zone? Like, obviously, from a traditional angle, obviously it's education, Belfast Met. So tell us a little bit more about, obviously, your involvement here today.
Yeah, so I suppose the college has access to a range of funding to assist startups and SMEs, both private sector and social enterprises, to help with skills development. So we have access to tailored mentoring and technical training around companies looking to develop new products or services. And a lot of that does generally have a technology or digital angle. So myself, I work across the creative and digital sector within the college. So I suppose for us attending Digital DNA, it's just about getting the word out there because I suppose sometimes programs and their eligibility and I suppose some of the parameters around that doesn't necessarily leap off the page with people, and they maybe don't quite understand what it means. So it's good for us to get out and actually engage with startups and SMEs. Suppose have our ear to the ground in terms of what's happening out there in the industry, and that also then as much as helps us develop new projects with industry and companies, but also helps us feed back to our curriculum areas. So we can feed back to curriculum managers and course coordinators. Here's what industry is telling us. Here's the skills that are needed. Here's the future skills that are needed, and then we can embed that into some of our curriculum. And I suppose it means it's sort of better for our students as well, so they're getting training that is actually in demand from employers. And then also, I suppose, we help sort of feed back the entrepreneurial side of things as well. So sort of actually connecting with some speakers that can come into the college, give a talk around their startup journey and maybe inspire some of our students to think about working for themselves rather than going out into sometimes the big bad corporate world.
So it's quite an holistic process then. I didn't realise, obviously, that kind of like then you then passing that back to the kind of like the courses and the lecturers and stuff, to obviously just for them to understand more about the industry skills that are needed and things. That's quite an interesting piece that I didn't know about, and I suppose it's obviously really relevant, obviously, for the college to make sure that the students are being educated one way or the other in either entrepreneurship or real work experience.
Yeah, so I suppose the way we do that, we've got 5 of me essentially, so there's 5 business development executives, and we all are aligned to different areas within the college that reflect industry. So I sort of am responsible for creative and digital. We have a person responsible for business, leadership and management, someone who looks after construction and engineering. So we are all out at relevant events to our sector and industry, hence why we're helping and sponsoring the Upstart Zone, and obviously Digital DNA, it's in the name. It's all about digital and technology and IT. So we go out and just speak to people. That really simplifies our job. But we go out, we speak, we listen, we engage, and then we connect companies into some of the funded programs that we would run, but also actually connect them into some of our curriculum areas around student-based projects, student placements, and then helping pipeline talent into some companies as well. So it's a very busy role, but it's really rewarding as well whenever you see, especially some of the startups that you maybe helped maybe 4 or 5 years ago flourishing all of a sudden. You feel like you're potentially part of that journey, and you did a little bit to help them along their way.
Absolutely, and like that ecosystem support is so important for an early stage founder to know what is out there that can help them on that journey. Like give us an example maybe of a typical type of project or something, like thinking of obviously the projects that you've worked on or referred people through to. Typical examples, obviously, that might help a founder listening in.
I suppose the likes of when I started the college about 4 years ago, got engaged with Axial 3D, who they sort of develop 3D printed anatomical models of I suppose the human anatomy to help the healthcare industry, and they were actually looking to develop a blockchain based sort of print on demand service for actually more private sector, and maybe looking at the US market and private healthcare. So we helped them to apply for an innovation voucher with Invest in I, and that funding enabled the college to develop a very small blockchain proof of concept for Axial 3D for their supply chain. So they implement blockchain technology into their supply chain to authenticate and verify their ordering and printing process, and it was nearly like a 3D printing on demand for human and anatomical parts. So that was sort of a very small prototype proof of concept to prove that it worked, and then they were able to then build upon that beyond the project internally. So it's that
amazing.
That was sort of verifying that it was possible and they could apply it to their business.
And that's that. Obviously, Axel 3D are a big success story in Northern Ireland. So obviously, to help them at a very early stage, it must be quite rewarding to see obviously the journey they've been on over the last 2-3 years, really, as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it's sort of, we then, it's not just a hard stop in terms of when their project finishes. At the end of our engagement, we'll work with them. We'll ask them to come in and be guest speakers. So when we've had different information sharing events around blockchain, we'll ask the likes of Axel 3D to come in and share their knowledge. And companies are more than happy to then, because obviously they're at a certain level now, but they're more than happy to feed back into that startup ecosystem because they recognise that they were helped on the way up as
Absolutely,
well. So,
yeah. And I think that's what's good about the ecosystem here is you can see that a lot of the founders that come back and do things, like we had a panel earlier on which was talking about raising investment, you can see their want to make sure that the next people coming through have that level of support and also learn from their experiences and perhaps challenges and mistakes as well along the way. So what one piece of advice maybe before we end would you pass on to a startup that perhaps is listening in today, in terms of obviously coming to an event like this? What should they do to make the most of an experience like this?
I suppose it sounds really simple, but talk to as many people as possible. I think it was alluded to on a panel yesterday, like, don't keep what you're doing a secret, like, tell people, and no one's gonna steal your idea, but tell people. And so many different people have so many different connections. Like, there's a lot of times I actually have conversations with startups and SMEs, and if it's not something the college has a program for or funding for, I can actually signpost them to another program that I'm aware of that fits either their niche or that the size or the stage they're at fits their company, and I can then signpost. So I never like to have a conversation and say, sorry, we can't help you, and that's the end of it. It's like, sorry, I can't help you, but go and speak to Alistair Stardigus, go and speak to Imelda at the Open University, go and speak to Fiona Bennington at Catalyst, and just join the dots, because that's what we're all here for. And it comes back as well. It's a two-way process. We refer people on to other programs, and it works the other way, that whenever those programs, it amplifies your message as well. So like, there's only like 5 of, say, me within the college trying to share the message, and that's what we're here for over the last few days. But the more people we speak to and discuss our programs, they can then refer people on, so it sort of amplifies everyone's message and amplifies the support. And sometimes there's too much support and it can be a bit blurred lines, and for startups to understand what's right for them at the right stages. But if they're speaking to the right people, they'll get good advice and set them on their way.
Great stuff, and thank you for your support obviously over the last couple of days.
No worries.
With the Startup Zone. Obviously it's great to have a college network, obviously Belfast Met and the other colleges in Northern Ireland who kind of do so much to support in terms of both their students but also that future entrepreneur coming through. So thank you for that. We'll be back with more Starticus chats very soon.